Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Um, just going to wait around for everyone. Good evening, Courts. Good evening. Good evening, Millard. Wijnland is here. Thank you for joining, Wijnland. So just give it a few seconds. Gone on just a minute before the time. Hi, Farah, Violet. Thanks for joining. So tonight we're talking about coping emotionally and mentally when everyone around you is conceiving. I think this is quite hectic when you, especially when a certain age group and all your friends, colleagues, everyone around you is conceiving and you on this journey. A lot of times people don't know that you're on the journey. So we're actually going to speak to Lizanne Van Waart. She's from Wijnland Fertility Clinic, and she basically deals with this type of thing. So we're just going to send an invite to join us. Let's go Wijnland. And Hazel, Pro Lab, thank you for joining. Just wait for, here we go. Hi, Lizanne.
Hi, Leanne. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's so nice. Let me just make this louder, sorry. There we go. I'm so nice to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a while, and I've got a little bit of flu, so you must excuse in
Oh,
between.
shame.
I've got a running nose, but it's nice to
Oh,
talk to you anyway.
shame. And it's winter also doesn't make it, it doesn't help very
Yeah, it
much,
does
eh?
make it really cold, yes. Okay.
Okay, so we're talking about coping emotionally and mentally. And I think one thing, what I can say is one thing that's quite close to the taboo subject of infertility is actually the mental side of things. It's also like, talking about um, the mental, someone going through something where it's coping emotionally and mentally and that type of thing. That is actually another taboo subject. People don't actually talk about what's going on, up here.
Yeah.
So
It's always with infertility, we're looking always at the medical part more than the psychological part, and we
yes,
can't get
psychology. That's the
away.
word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and we can't get away from that because infertility is a very stressful condition. And we know
Yeah.
if we go through stressful conditions, then definitely, it's very much the same like cancer and hypertension and any of your other
Yes.
big diseases like heart diseases. So mental health would have a huge impact. So people would
Yes.
struggle. There would be times maybe that they feel quite depressed and anxious about treatment plans. So I think that side of fertility treatments is so important to talk about because
Yeah.
people not always have the space or don't know where to go
Yes.
to talk about these things. So I can carry on because I think if you want to know how can we help these people when to talk about, the mental part, I think is first is to understand what is emotions, what kind of emotions are you going through that you can analyze yourself and see what is the trigger points in these treatment plans and why it's not going so well with you. So I think if we talk about emotions, I don't know how many people do know what is emotions. Emotions is actually, a neuropsychological condition where put your thoughts and your feelings together and you had a certain reaction, a behavior to that emotions that go through your mind as well. So, what is emotions? Emotions is like, when you feel really sad, you can feel happy, or you can feel anxious, or you can have fear. I think a lot of fertility patients struggle with fear. You could be
Yeah. Yeah.
surprised maybe after diagnosis. So I think that's the first thing to as to know or notice these emotions. Now, normally with the fertility patients, the women,
Yeah.
what kind of things are they struggle with? They've really struggle with loss of control of their lives and their body. It feels like a completely on control. So women normally struggle with feelings like surprise. They deny sometimes these emotional reactions. They're angry, they're sad, they're
Yeah.
sometimes jealous of other people. They feel helplessness and sometimes despair as well. Where men is a little bit different. They are more angry, powerless. They
Yeah.
really disappointed. They fear for the rejections. I think that's the most important one when it comes to men. If you struggle to fall pregnant, masculinity is very much involved here. So for fear
Yeah.
for rejection is very important there. And then also hopelessness and quite confused. So I think if we look at all these sorts of different emotions, we must also understand if you've got these feelings of reactions, there's something physical that's going to happen in your body as well. Neurological, there's the way that you're going to think about it. And then you make your framework, how you're going to react and voice it and put it into terms of thought, how you're going to react and to these treatments. So I think
Yeah.
that's for me the first step, to identify these emotional feelings, and then we can
Yeah.
work from there. I also think when you go through fertility, we know it's a grieving process. And not a lot
Yeah.
of people know that what is the meaning between hope and despair is like. Mostly we use the Ross model, where we call about the first reaction. You would deny this diagnosis, you will
Yeah.
avoid it, you will be in shock. Again, a lot of feelings that's going through your mind. The second phase, you could be angry, and that's where the anxious part started to play such a big role. And then the third phase is normally where you start to bargain. We see a lot where people will maybe get more spiritual and religious, where they want to bargain with God. That's one of the um, stages of grieving. And then also where you really feel into this big hole of depression and anxiety, you're not coping at all. And when you stay there, then we needed to help you in certain ways. And then the last phase of grieving is where okay, this is my way forward. I can put sort of these thoughts together and a framework how to work from here. So I think
Yeah.
for me, the first thing is when we talk about the fertility patients' mental health is to understand what is the feelings and reactions what I'm going through, and how am I going to handle these feelings and thoughts about that.
You mind
Um,
if I ask a question about it? Because I've actually got a few questions.
yes, we
Do you
can.
mind if I ask a few
Yeah.
questions? Yeah. So, when you go talk about coping, when everyone around you is falling pregnant, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, please give us some tools to help with this. How do we do? What tools could you give us?
Yeah, I think it's the tools that we sometimes use is problem solving. So we have a few techniques where we would help our patients and say, okay, problem solving is something, again, is a cognitive decision that you make. And narrative therapy is one of them that you can use. It's a style of therapy that helps people to become and embrace something else as well in their own lives. So I think it's where we try to teach the patients that you have to put other aims out there, purpose, and giving meaning to other things in your life as well, not only fertility. So you can help them identify and objective these problems, and then also look at other purposes in your life. Frame the problem within a larger social context. Sometimes then you will realize I'm not the only one. There's more people,
Yes.
or it's not really so bad. My conditions is maybe not so bad as other people. And teaching the specific people how to make room for other stories as well. And that's where I say where you get giving meaning to other things in your life as well. Another way of problem solving is what we use, imaginary retranscription, is where you got a certain memory of traumatic things in your life, and they experience infertility as a very traumatic experience, and how you challenge yourself and see if you can make the story a little bit, this image a little bit better for yourselves. So take responsibility for your own happiness, because we sometimes want to be only negative, but you
Yes.
have to make decisions to own that happiness part as well. Make up a list of other things that's also for you very important, and do that and live to that. Refocus on your own needs and desires and passions. As I said, you're not only the person for falling pregnant. Ask for help. I think that's the most important thing. People think,
Yeah.
I can't ask for help. And I think that's go out and ask for help, or even offer help to other people. That's also a way of coping and helping. And then sometimes if it's really go bad to yourself, and say it's okay to when it's go bad, and I can smooth myself or pamper myself when it's not going well, because it's okay. Only when I'm going to stay in that psychological status, then it's more severe in the sense.
Yes.
Other thing that we also sometimes use that I think that's also quite a good technique, we call it, to help you when you're quite anxious about, is grounding techniques, to calm you down when you feel so anxious and you're not specific. I think the fertility patients, when it comes to embryo transfer, that's the most anxious part for them, is this going to happen, and as I'm going to fall pregnant. So we've got a technique, we call it the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it means like we identify 5 things that you can see while you sit in that scenario, 4 things that you can feel at that specific moment, 3 things that you can hear, and 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So this is a typical, in a nutshell, mindfulness, where you're at that specific moment when you're so anxious, just capture the moment and see, use your vision and your taste and how you touch things, and see around you. How can I identify other things and not focus only on my anxiety? So what can I see around me? What's beautiful around me? There's always something nice, maybe a flower that's sitting next to me, something that I can feel or touch. Maybe I can listen to music. Maybe I can smell something that also is uplifting for you. And then also sometimes not too many food, but something to taste is always a good thing to help you to go through a stressful time. So I think that's small little things that you can teach yourself. Breathing exercises is always good. That also help you to go through that anxious part as well. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second, so I don't know if you saw me.
Yeah, I
But
saw you.
you
Yeah.
can carry on.
I
Oh,
know.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just the breathing exercises during these times when you're so anxious is also very important, and that you can use to help yourself to go through difficult times. I think one of the things is maybe the question that you're going to ask is what is really mental health? I think in these days, mental health is such a huge thing. We know that 1 out of 5 American citizens, adults, struggle with mental health illnesses. And sometimes during your life, 1 out of 25 people during your life struggle with sort of any form of mental health. So, and I think specific after COVID, this is something that we see more and more in the practices that's coming in. And a lot of people would use antidepressant. There's a space for that. I'm not saying you're not allowed to take it, but there's also other things that you can do. So I think what is mental health? It's where you really struggle with a certain condition, and it affects your feelings and your thoughts. As I said, your emotions, what you can experience during time. And then you will be diagnosed with something like depression, a mood disorder, or a general anxiety disorders. And sometimes also it's not only a disorder, but you sometimes will have symptoms that's and we know the fertility patients, specific with the medication, it could have a huge impact, and actually, the risk factors for that is so high that you do experience it. So mental health is things that I think we needed to look at in these days, and also that patients understand what is my own mental status, and also what's my well-being. What is well-being? Well-being is something else. That's where we go in psychology more to the positive side. Sometimes if we ask our patients, what is your other happiness basis? They can't mention it to you. They don't know what is other things that also make you happy, and it's difficult for them to mention that. So well-being is when it could be spiritual, it could be a lot of things that you add to your well-being status. So this is more the positive effects that you can add in your life as well. So I always explain for patients when it's come to the positive and the negative effects in the fertility treatment. I put people always on a weighing scale, these old weighing scales that you got, sometimes on the one side you got all your risk factors, is where your anxiety, depression of years and all these things is. In the middle of that old scale, you, the person with the thoughts, the brain, and the decisions that you can make. And then the other side is the protective factor, the positive effects of psychology. That's your happiness spaces, your resilience parts. And when it's go bad with you, you stand in the middle. You got all these emotions and reactions, but you can make a decision and the thought, use your thoughts processes to add a little bit more of these positive things in your lives, that you can bring up the scale a little bit, that it's more in balance. Sometimes it's easy just to be stuck in the risk factors. I always say to patients, it's easy to complain, but it's not so easy to get solutions. So it's where you teach yourself to get solutions as well. And it could be small things that you can empower yourself to be a little bit more happy as well. So I think that's for me a very a practical way for people to understand what happened with me psychological. There's in all of us the risk factors of anxiety and things, but also on the other side we have virtues and strengths and other things that we sometimes can use to lift up this part of your psychological status.
Okay. There's one of the questions that you asked is, what are happy hormones? It's quite a nice question, and I can't wait to hear this answer.
Yeah, I think I'm going to read some of the stuff because there's so many to say about it, but I think happy hormones is, as I said, normally when you do struggle with mental health disorders, you mostly would be diagnosed with a clinical psychologist or your psychiatrist, and then you go on to maybe antidepressant. But not a lot of people also think, what is dopamine? What is serotonin? Where is this coming from? And you can actually do a lot. You can exercise, to improve that hormones as well. So the 4 happy hormones that you needed to have these positive effects in your life. And the first one is dopamine. So dopamine is also been known as your feel-good hormone. So you need that in your life as a neurotransmitter, and that's sometimes when you use an antidepressant. So that would be play the serotonin, and the dopamine is when it play with the serotonin and the transmitters that it's uplifting there. So that's a feel-good hormone, and it's very important that that's part of your brain system as well. So dopamine is strongly associated with pleasure. When you do experience pleasure moments, rewards, when you get rewards, reinforcement, when people is giving feedback to you, and then also it to have an effect on your memory and motor system. So if you're quite depressed and you have less dopamine, you would struggle to remember things. You will even be a little bit more slow in walking and sort of things. So that's where we know we need a little bit of dopamine. And actually, dopamine is something that's been produced in the gut, your gut part, and the brain would release it. So what can you do to release this dopamine? Is good food. Make sure that you eat healthy, good food, because that's related very well with your mental health status as well. Gratitude, give yourself a little bit of gratitude. Essential oils can also help, like your lavender and lemon plays such a good role with the release of dopamine. Goal achievements, and that's why it's so important with the fertility patients that you also have other goals, where you can tick it off, that feel good, I can do it. It's not only
I love doing that.
Yeah, and then try even supplements like your green teas can also help with release. Listen to music is a very good one, and then also dopamine would be released when you sleep. So a good sleep at night, 6 or 8 hours sleep is also very important for that. Your second happy hormone is your serotonin ones. That's for your moods and feelings. That stable your moods and your feelings. So that's also something that you would find in your stomach and your intestines. And again, what can we do to release more of these, and maybe not using an antidepressant, is exercise at least 30 minutes a day. Spend time in nature where you can see something else. We're talking about the grounding techniques. Look at things around you, smell it, see it, touch it. Vitamin D plays such an important role. We luckily in South Africa do have a lot of vitamin D, but maybe sometimes not enough for our serotonin levels. Meditation is a good one. Omega-3s is where you boost your serotonin levels. So I think, and then again with the meditation, your mindfulness exercises would be a very good one there. The third happy hormone is your oxytocin. The oxytocin is a hormone, we call it the cuddle hormone. It's normally when people are pregnant, there's a lot of, it's in the uterus, there's a lot of oxytocin being released, a feel good cuddle hormone. So that have a very good, a big impact on the reproductive system. And I think that's one that we needed to look at. So here, again, you can try something as yoga is very important for that. Again, listen to music. One that's really important for to release oxytocin is also having good intercourse. That's very important. Sometimes the infertility patients, as you know, they use intercourse for something else, for to have a baby and not to have fun with it. And that's also part to keep a family together or partners together. I always say for couples, you must remember sexual intercourse, intimacy, means for a woman the closeness that it could be with the partner, where for men, they needed to have that desire arousal phase more. They just can't do it morning, noon, and night. There must be that need specific for that. For women, as again as the closest to your partner. So that's also very important to have for oxytocin release, to keep the relation also going as sexual intercourse. Start to hug people and cuddle people. Get a dog, that you can cuddle that, so that you can release these oxytocin. And then the other one, the last one is endorphins, is where that play actually a very important role with the nerve system. With your pituitary glands that would be involved. And again, it would be like you can use acupuncture for that. Again, even have dark chocolates to eat. Maybe a little bit of red wine is not a bad one. A good laugh with friends. And then also perform a random act of kindness. As soon as you give to somebody else, that's also release these happy hormones. Or you can sometimes also take a hot bath. So I'm always say to people how being happy makes you healthier. Positive psychology cannot be fulfilled without the discussion of happiness. The main concern about your mental health. So happiness is something that you decided you want to do. This is not something that's you have to you have to decide it and do the things to get to the point that I also experience all these happy feelings as well. So I think that's, in a nutshell, a lot of things that you can do to release these happy hormones that we needed to be more positive about things in lives. And it's simple things that you can use to release that wonderful chemical happy hormones as well.
Yeah, so I don't know if the next one where you're saying, should people engage in problem-solving techniques? I don't know if that is part of what we just spoke about as well.
Yeah, I think it's let's also understand what is the difficult part for the fertility patients. I think it's when it comes to the point where they not always realize what specific is anxiety, where's this trigger points and where it's coming from, the risk factors. I think it's an intense feelings of fear and anxious and worry about a specific situation that I've been in. In this case, it would be my fertility treatment. When I'm depressed, what does it mean? I feel sad. I lost interest and pleasure. I've got a lot of guilt feelings. I'm a low self-worth. sometimes can't sleep. I've got sleep disorders, poor concentration. That's when we know depression is more active there, and it's also anxiety. Thought processes, as I said, you can't get away because the brain control a lot of these things. Is the cognitive processes where you suddenly started to struggle with intrusive thoughts. You engage with something like we call uncontrolled unwanted thoughts. You would also maybe remember in your own fertility days where you really say, why I can't fall pregnant? What's the reason? What's wrong with me? And it's like that spiral things. And the more you think about it, the more you get anxious about it. The more you get anxious about it, the more fear you have for treatment. And it seems like in the end, it's completely helplessness. I'm never going to fall pregnant. So I think thought processes is also something that we have to understand. And then, as I said, your predictive factors is where you really concentrate on your well-being and what is general well-being and what can I do to improve my well-being. And I have to put small happiness moments in my life. I always say to patients, it's I love nature and I love birds, and every day of my morning, 5:30 in the morning, I will get out of bed, have a nice cup of coffee, smell it, that you can have that nice smell and enjoy that moment, and listen to the birds that's coming, you know, awake the day, and they sing and they chirp and they do all these things, and it's such a good feeling in the end, is where you just have a moment for you and nature. Nothing else can have an impact on that, and it's a way of living that you have to teach yourself, and it helps a lot where you can release some of these anxious parts in your life as well. So I don't know if you got any questions about all these things, but or all this.
There isn't much questions left to ask you because I think you've given us such a lot of information. But what I want to ask, only because of what my interactions with other women that's been dealing with infertility also, that's on the journey of actually doing IVF and so forth. At Wijnland, do you actually, is it with every patient? I don't know if I've asked you this before, but listening on your talk, especially in the beginning when you spoke about what you tell patients, is it every patient that's going through IVF that you actually guide, or maybe someone else in your office that's part of your team that would actually guide them through the IVF journey on the psychological side of things, or even
Yes,
when something doesn't work
yeah.
out?
Yeah, what we do is we do a lot of health psychology, and health psychology is not really a discipline in South Africa where you can register as a health psychologist, but that's where you work in units where you work with the disease and know what is the behavior that's going to correlate with this disease. So it's not like I've been diagnosed with clinical depression and then I've got fertility. It's like fertility first, and now I've got symptoms like depressions and things, and how to handle that. So I've got more people. Courtney Fields is also a master psychology student in those days, but she got a master's in psychology, is also in my team. So all the IVF patients, before they start with treatment, we give them all this information. So we will sit and explain to them what's going to happen and what's going to happen to your own psychological status. If we do pick up that depression is there and they got, or their sexual problems, all sorts of things, I use a big team. We use then we will send them off to specific clinical psychologists that we work according to that, or we will also work with on our website. We also had Marlies Swart that's doing she's a sexual therapist but also a clinical psychologist, so we will send the couples then off to her because she's the expert in that specific field. And then also our same-sex couples will go to somebody else where they can help them whenever the relationship is in problems as well. So I always did believe in more people, to help you to build this mental health, but it's where you give a space to these patients where they can open up to you and then get the problems and see where they struggle and refer them. Sometimes they're already based with the psychologist, and then they would carry on. So you will say to them, listen, that's something that I think you needed to discuss in the next session with the psychologist. You are fear for fertility treatment, or fear for needles, or all these sorts of things, and see how you can get help from there. Yes, so all the IVF patients, before they start with treatment, will have these sessions and explain to them what is it all about.
Okay, thank you. I'm so glad you're saying that. And then my last question is, I'm asking you this because I think you're the best person to ask when it comes to questions like this. Um, I've had patients come to me and say they've just had IVF treatment. Unfortunately, it's failed. What can they do now? Where do they go to? What is the next step with something like that? Yeah. Is there something also that Wijnland would then you guys would step in, and you've got something that you guys do, in that situation?
We got a session, we call it a negative feedback session. It's not always the nicest word, but we will recap and summarize after a failed cycle, what was the things that maybe could be went wrong. And we always, after that session, it would be between the doctors and me and Courtney that would sit in with them, so we do it together with the patients. We also try to give something new that we maybe can do in the future. Well, how can we change something? And if there's something that we need to change. And I think also just to notice the patients that they sit with a lot of guilt feelings. Sometimes they will say, maybe, what did I did wrong? I tried to do everything right, and now I'm not pregnant. So
And they're questioning on their own.
Yes, what is the reasons for that? So we try to help them to work through these processes and say there's nothing that you did wrong. Maybe it's not the right time or the right place at that moment. But also, I think the most important thing, when the patients leave that session going home from our practice or the rooms, that they at least have something else to hold on. Maybe next step we will maybe freeze all cycle, or maybe they still smoking, and I said, okay, but at least let's help you stop smoking or vaping. Or maybe you are depressed. Dr. Van Waart will always say, maybe you are depressed, maybe it's time to see a clinical psychologist that help you through these processes. But we always try to give something to hold on, and how we can make it better for them the next round. I think also that's, for me, the most important thing in these sessions is that to be very honest and open with your patients. When it comes to the end of the road, if it's, don't mislead them and say to them, listen, medical wise, we did everything. Psychological wise, we did everything. Maybe it's the end of your own reproductive phase of life, and help them to have then a closure session about their own reproductive phase of life. But also say to them, there's another way of, if you want to be a mother or a father, you can also experience it in the modern families, where you can adapt a donor sperm or donor egg. But go home and think about it. But I think, to be honest to them, not giving the false hope and unrealistic expectations. I think that's the hardest and unethical thing that people can do to patients, to let they come back. But we know from a medical point of view, we're almost on the end of the journey, and to be honest with them.
That is so beautiful to hear these things. I've had a patient where she said to me, she phoned and she says she's been to the doctor. I mean, she's just gotten a call to say, it never worked. Unfortunately, the IVF was a fail, and there was no follow-up or anything. So she's sitting not knowing what to do next. What is my next step? She's going through all these things, emotions on their own. And I think a lot of women deal with that. So it's beautiful, and I thank you for doing that. That you take that extra step even after a failed cycle. They still would leave your office thinking, okay, this is my next step. You've got questions of, what do I do next? Where do I go to? That you could actually do that for them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's like we always sit in the clinic, success rate. What is the meaning of success rate? Success rate is not only a pregnancy. It's also, you know, these people have to live their lives for the rest of their lives, and you can damage them for the rest of their lives that they not carry on. So I think it's important that we also keep in mind there's a huge psychological aspects, as we did this now, the mental health status of your patients, and you can destroy them if you're not giving answers to their questions as well. And I think that's the most important thing for people, because then they can get closure if they do have the facts on the table, and then they can say, okay, this is now this, so let's go on and move on and do something else, or focus and give meaning to other things in my life that's also important for you. Yeah, so that's how we see it, but it takes quite a long time or a lot of effort to do it, but I think that's it is, we feel quite strongly about it. So it's only our IVF patients, because we're not enough staff to do IOIs or even our home plan patients as well. So it's only the IVF patients that we tried to do all these sessions with.
Oh, perfect. I don't think there's anything else. If there's anything else that you want to touch on, other than that, if you could just let us know where, if anyone wants to get hold of Wijnland, how did they do that?
Okay, yeah, Wijnland is www.wijnland.fertility.co.za is our website. The Wijnland you spell, Dr. Van Waart is actually Dutch original, so we spell it W-I-J-N. It's like a Dutch spelling of Wijn. So you can find us on our website. I think there's a lot of information there as well. So we are in Stellenbosch. It's a nice area to be in as well. A feel-good place, a beautiful place. Yeah, but there's a lot of information as well on the website. And with our international patients, or sometimes with our national patients, sometimes we will have Zoom meetings before they come to the clinic as well. If there's enough time, Courtney is very good in that, arrange that, and we will also maybe discuss something before they come into the treatment plans with us. Yeah, so that's there. They can just have a look at the website and see if they can find more information, or they can email us. There's also an email address where they can get some more answers to their questions as well. But just remember, I also just want to say to patients, new patients, that we've got a policy of 48 hours to answer these emails, because sometimes it takes a lot you know, to answer. So we just give us some time to answer them as well.
That's awesome. I'm seeing so many beautiful messages coming through here for you guys. People singing your praises here. Everyone that's been at Wijnland and saying how awesome you guys are and what a great team you guys are. So thank you all. I'm reading all the messages as it's coming in. People are saying the author, Dr. Johannes and Dr. Van Waart, is truly amazing. He's open to the point but still have empathy. So thanks, guys, for all the beautiful messages. I'm sure Lizanne has seen it as well. Thank you, Lizanne, for your time to discuss this with us this evening. Even though you're sick and not doing so well, I hope you feel better soon, and I hope we can chat soon again.
Have a lovely evening, all of you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lizanne. Bye-bye.